the bay, the city that rocks, the city that never sleeps.
Macaulay plays the mamba. Listen to the radio. Don't you remember? We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. We built this city.
So, welcome to the City Locked Ultimate Ironman Rules and Exception video. If you are joining us recently, or if you're here from the first episode, let me just explain what is going on in this series. Because at first glance, it seems pretty obvious, but as you play the account and as I've discovered, there are a lot of things that you don't anticipate running into that seem like they're arbitrary, that restrict the account almost too much. So I have created a list of every single city, or what I consider to be a city in the game. You'll notice from the title sequence and the thumbnails and such that there is an asterisk there, and that is because basically I'm stretching the description of what a city will be so that the account can. On top of that, within each city, the type of things we're allowing are anything that is within the city, and we have to travel to the city by teleportation or by another city. So for example, if the two cities were linked together, and West and East Ardoon is a good example, you can just walk between them, right? But Falador and Varrock, you can't walk between them because there's like area in between them, so you have to be able to teleport. Things like the underground, they are part of the city, and the underground I'm not really restricting. As long as you go underground in the city and you come above the ground in a city, that counts. Mini games and stuff that like teleport you to an instance or something, as long as it's accessible in the city, I'm allowing it. So apart from that kind of goes over the general rules and restrictions. I'm actually going to go through every single thing that I've considered to be a city and everything that I'm considering not a city. So if we start off with the cities that I think people wouldn't really have any questions about. We've got Alcarid, which we can get to by various methods, which I'll put on the screen. Lumbridge, which we can just teleport to and home teleport. Varrock, obviously, which is where we're starting as well, so that's pretty obvious. Falador as well. And then slightly more obvious, but Rimington, Port Sarim as well, because I'm obviously counting ports as part of the city as well. Brimhaven as well. Yanil, Port Khazad, the Sears Village, Camelot as well, Cathaby, Berthorpe, Tavali, Ferox Enclave, because it has its own specific teleport and it's sort of an area as well. Polvernik, Uza, Nada, Sophanum, and then slightly more contentious, but the Ruins of Unka, which is where Temporos is. It is sort of, the named area again. So by the same extension, the Giants Plateau as well, and the Citithea academy thing up there. The Corsair Cove, Barbarian Outpost, Void Knights Outpost, and Entrana. And just to, I'll say this in between here, basically, the idea to determine the boundary of a city where we're not sure exactly where the boundary ends, something like the Ruins of Unka or the Corsair Cove, for example, you just go in the in-game music player and have a look where the music track changes. That roughly is going to be where Jagex has decided the city or the boundary is ending. So for example, in Cathaby, you'll see later in the series, I can actually go a lot further than I thought I could have gone in Cathaby if I was setting my own rules for it. But I'm just trying to follow the music tracks if I'm not sure on a boundary. We're starting with Ardoon. The way I can get to Ardoon is clearly by teleporting there, but the teleport is locked behind Plague City. So the exception is I will just allow myself Plague City. I don't think you'll get anything crazy from that quest. Edgeville and Draenor Village, which are both accessed by Glory. These aren't really exceptions as well. These are just things that are not so obvious as how I can get to. Relica I can get to as well by moving my house there. The Tree Gnome Stronghold I have to complete Tree Gnome Village for. I'm considering this one. I think for the purpose of putting this video out there, for the people who want to use this as well, I think it's fine to allow an exception for Tree Gnome Village, so you can use Spirit Trees. Fishing colony is not allowed at all. I think there's no point allowing that exception. Hesidius we can actually get to by moving a house there. Shazian, we can get there. I'm not going to explain how, but there's no exception need to be made for this. You can just get there. Arceus, there's no exception need to be made for that. Lovakenge, no exception again. Piscarilius, no exception. So Mount Karlum is accessible by Fairy Ring and Rada Blessing, so I could make an exception for that, but I'm not going to. I think there's no point there at all. So Mount Karlum is off limit. Farming Guild, you don't need to make an exception for. The Skills Necklace has a direct teleport to it. Same goes for the Woodcutting Guild. The Lunar Isle is accessible after Lunar Diplomacy. Now, that is a quest that I will be doing an exception for. Mainly like obviously the city part of the Lunar Isle, because you can teleport there. So that will be an exception that I'm making. Natenot and Yatizo as well, by doing the Fremenic Isles. So I think I will allow an exception for that as well. Miscellanea, managing Miscellanea. There's not really any point in this because you can't actually get it on an Ultimate Ironman. I mean, if people want to make that exception to use the city for whatever reason, go ahead, but I'm not going to allow it for myself. Canifis, now this is interesting. So there is a way to get there, and it's by doing Desert Treasure. So I think I might allow this exception as long as I don't really use the ancient magics for anything other than teleportation, potentially. But so I will make an exception for that, but that'll be way off in the future. Same obviously goes for Port Fatsmaeus, because you've got the same requirements pretty much for that, plus another quest. But I don't think I'll ever really use that, but I will allow an exception for that. So Dark Mayor as well, and Sleep, and Burr, basically those two are locked behind the quest again. So I will allow an exception for that, because again, the only way to get to that place is with a teleport that's locked behind a quest. So as long as I get the quest requirements, I'm happy with that, no problem. So Berg de Rot and Morton, these two again are locked behind specific quests, so I'm fine to do those quests basically. Charlotte Village is locked behind a quest. I will be happy to make that exception as well. Taibo Wanai, you can get to it by teleport scrolls, so I'm not making an exception for that. The Myths Guild, I am making an exception for, because it has a direct teleport to it again. I don't know whether it'll ever be doable with the accounts restrictions, but if I could do the quest, then I'm going to allow myself to do the quest. Lilietta, the elf little city thing, I can make an exception for doing roving elves, because Underground Pass should be doable in my rule restriction anyway. So it's just allowing the exception of roving elves to get a teleport crystal. But again, it's like I can't really use the teleport crystal that often, and I can't, once I have the teleport, I'm not going to drop the teleport crystal and get it back every time I need it. It's just, once I have the teleport, I can make that exception, and if I drop it, then it's gone forever, for example. So yeah, anyway, Prifdinus is obviously the next big one. Now, I'm going to allow the exception for that, because that's actually one of the big end game goals for the account, is to get access to Prifdinus, the greatest city to go to, so it seems like something to do. Tyrus Camp as well, Catapult Quest, I think I'd be happy to give that exception as well. Apatol, Monkey Madness, happy to give that exception as well. The Tazar City, no exception needs to be made for that. You can get there by minigame teleport, I think. So I've not actually tried that in game yet, but I'll have to see if it's doable. Dorgish Khan, Death to the Dorgashun, so I can allow myself that exception, I think. Keldagrim. Keldagrim's really interesting. I've tried really hard, and you'll see in the videos later in the series, to actually get to Keldagrim, but you can't get there until you've done Giant Dwarf, basically, because the game wants you to start that quest as soon as you get there. You can't get there in any other cheesy way. So I will just at one point just go walk into Keldagrim, leave, and then access it normally. So it's an exception I'm making, but it's not a really big problem. The Barbarian Village, you can get there with the Skull Scepter. But you obviously have to get there to get the Skull Scepter and etc. And I don't really like that, so I'm not allowing Barbarian Village at all. Zenaris is accessible via Lost City. I'm considering it. I think I'm going to allow it, just I'm saying it as the rule set now. But fairy rings, no fairy rings at all. There's no point doing that. Because I say it doesn't directly access a city that was otherwise locked if you didn't have fairy rings. And the final one is the Crafting Guild, which is accessible by the Skills Necklace. Another one I forgot to include was the Wizard's Tower, which is accessible by the Necklace of Passage. So obviously that was quite a lot of cities I've been through, and obviously not all of them are really cities, which is exactly why I've said, you know, things like the guilds, for example, you know, in my head I'm absolutely fine to allow a guild, because it's not a city, but it's like a hub or a settlement of people that, you know, exist. It's a place on the map, it's marked, it's named, people know about it. It feels pretty obvious, but obviously it breaks the rules of a city locked, but they are really sort of what I'm thinking of when I'm trying to make the account. The difficulty is obviously getting there without leaving a city, or just by walking to them. The area in between, the biophobia, as which is what the account's named after, would still be there. We can't walk from Asidius to the Woodcutting Guild, for example, or we certainly can't walk from Valador to the Crafting Guild. As long as there's a direct teleport there and it's locked behind something, then I'm allowing it. Because the idea is I want this account to be fun, and it can be really fun looking at all these possible cities we can get to, but there's got to be a lot of planning and a lot of difficult gameplay options to work between them all. So yeah, I'll obviously in the description of this video there'll be a link to like a visual version, so you can see what exception you need to make, how to get there, what's allowed, what's disallowed. If you guys want to try this for yourself or something as well, join me on the adventure. If you ever do want to, just hop in my friends chat on my main, Seville. I'll always be in there. A couple of my friends are in there as well. Always be happy to chat, see what's going on with you guys, share some progress. It'll be a good time, hopefully. So I hope you guys are looking forward to more of the series. I've made this after the first episode, or just before the first episode's come out. So I don't want to give away too much of my plans for the series, but yeah, I really hope you guys will look forward to it and enjoy it. Thank you very much.